Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Not Another Tooling Podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm Brown. Matt, how are you? Matt, you're on mute, so that's a good start.
There you go. I was effing and blinding, so it's probably best I didn't really speak, to be honest. I'm good. Getting some focus, getting some good feedback. Good.
Excellent. That's good. And I think we've changed it up a bit from where we started, where I was on my standing desk and you were walking every week, and we seem to be very chilled out this week compared to normal. I've moved rooms for a little bit. No. It's not. But we have a very special guest today. So welcome, Greg, to the podcast.
Thank you
very much for giving up an hour of your life to speak to our wonderful audience. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Greg. What do you do, and how did you end up becoming a foremost expert in the world of observability?
I'm not the only one. There are others. But no, I've spent a lifetime in IT, and I've kind of performed everyone's roles, working up from I started with changing tapes on mainframes and things like that before the internet and before mid-range Windows, bit of Linux. So I've been through decades and decades of kind of technology changes and innovation, and I've always found myself in an operational role, whether it's deploying it, managing it, monitoring it. And I've worked in multiple industries like banking, automotive. There's a lot more. And so I find myself running my own company, specializing in observability. But I think in the next hour, we're going to talk about a bit more about what observability actually is and how it's evolved. But yeah, this is where I find myself. So thank you for inviting me on.
Wonderful. We're going to have some fun today then, because we both have been around, all three of us have been around this space for a very long time. So probably references to the old days where you used to get your product on a CD and have to physically install it on devices.
I remember that. I remember getting the packs from BMC, thinking about it. Like, you used to buy it and they had to, even at the point I crossed over, that you'd be buying it and they still had to ship it with all of it in, even though you didn't actually need the material. Gosh, that was a little while ago.
It was indeed.
I go back to mag tapes. It used to be mag tapes, like a bit like the olden day films, and it would take hours and hours just to read a megabyte of code into a mainframe. So yeah, the floppy disks were kind of brilliant at the time. They were loading Windows and in 3 or 5 disks with 3.1, and Windows came with 11 disks and Office and everything else. There's good things and bad things about it, right? There's always
absolutely
change, but
and now we find ourselves in an incredibly complex world, right, where you've got microservices being spun up and down, left, right, and center in other people's data centers that you have little control over, and all this sort of stuff. Is a very, very, very different world. So a world where observability is really, really important. So how would you define observability today, Greg?
Yeah, how would you define it? It's used loosely quite a lot, actually. Lots of vendors out there, they kind of say they have observability, but do they really? For me, it always goes back to the original few words, which is about monitoring the internal state of something, and in a complex environment. From measuring business services and how well your applications are performing. It's not just how hot they are, how fast they are. It's actually, are they doing what they're supposed to? And that's really from the internal state. There's lots of other things about observability in terms of approaches, different telemetry types, whether you use approaches from synthetics, whether you go straight to logs, whether you're looking at something else. But observability for me is really about I think we might talk about this in the next hour, about business outcomes. What is it you're actually trying to, what problem are you trying to solve, and what are you actually measuring? If you're just measuring tin for the sake of it, that's not really going to make much difference to your business, really. You want to be looking at the business throughput, volumes, what can we do better, innovation, and using observability to kind of just make better decisions, really.
So it's a really big point, and Matt and I are super hot on this, and because the majority of times we go talk to an organization, they'll say, oh yeah, we're about to go out to market for a new observability tool, and you say, oh great, what are you after? And they go, well, here's a list of all the technical functions that we need. Yeah. Okay, great. How is your business going to be better in a year? Oh, well, we'll have a view of what's happening in the latest and greatest thing in AWS. Guys, this is not the way you want to go. But that's still how things play out today in the majority of organizations, right? Yeah.
Those kind of new serverless or whatever's going to be next month, but that's just where you collect the telemetry, right? If I go back to what we were talking about earlier, my days when I first started on a mainframe is that we used to debug code by printing out boxes of paper and would go through page by page, troubleshooting manually, right? Then it evolved into logs, because that was the best next thing, that we had output that we could then grep or search through that made it faster. And the problem we're trying to solve there is better code, faster troubleshooting, less downtime, etc. And all these new things that might be Kubernetes, might be Docker, might be, at the end of the day, they're hosting services and they're doing things, and they're the most important things you have to kind of keep an eye on. Everything else I feel is CPU, memory, disk IOPS, etc. They're just metrics. They're kind of indicators of something, is below in temperature or something. And it's the same across, not just it's kind of infrastructure wide across any customer, across a network, across a line. It could be anything, but you've got to, I think, always focus on what's the problem you're trying to solve there. Because you can collect a whole lot of stuff just for the sake of it, and you still can't measure the one business process or service that really matters. So it's about getting that right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of like the basics is, can you see what's going on, right? The second bit is, do you understand the context of that? If we've got three problems, which one is causing our business the most pain in terms of financial gain, probably, right? And then do we have the information to then go and be able to act on that and do something about it in a timely manner? I think those three. Yeah.
They're kind of, so you could almost pick that up and move it into any environment, any customer, any product, any scenario. Before you can act, you need to kind of be absolutely sure that you know the root cause. And the step before that is that you could be treating symptoms, and that's what causes delay. But symptoms with context are a lot easier to troubleshoot symptoms without context. You have to know what it boils up to. What does it actually impact? So if I'm an online retailer and I've got half of a data center that's kind of got issues, connectivity, we need to know first of all what is its blast radius. It's what is the actual impact here. And sometimes you could be troubleshooting things, spending time that are actually symptoms, but with a bit of context to say this is a live set of infrastructure or it's not, then your decision making for those three steps you mentioned is a lot faster and smoother. You can act faster if you're absolutely sure, and context gives you that.
You've gone through like the history of you doing the more manual stuff, that context aware, etc. Like what has that evolution then been from your perspective of being like literally hands-on, pen and paper, through to now? And like, is this the position that's available now with observability tools? Like, how much is better? Like, actually, you could do it anyway. You could do it anyway 5 years ago. It was just different, or is it actually a brand new way to go about it? Has it actually introduced a brand new way?
Oh yeah, I mean, observability should be giving you all the answers, right? But there's a phase, if I go back to the mainframe and printing and skipping with it, we used to go through a pencil, like boxes and boxes of paper, trying to find that line of code. There was no search or grep or anything simple that would make it easier. We moved into kind of mid-range Windows and IIS and Apache and Netscape and all these, iPlanet, all these kind of web. The web was born. It was pretty much logs that we used. I think that the problems you're trying to solve is the same. You're trying to get to root cause, but in those days there were no monitoring tools. Observability wasn't even discussed a decade or so ago, right? These are kind of more innovative, out of the box ways of finding the problems that are most common, right? But all observability, so in that era, I used to build our own tools. We'd build before Splunk our own logging platform and a database that gives us search and reports. We'd get root cause analysis from it, and then monitoring tools were kind of born. They become kind of talked about. Everyone was buying them, but it's still the same problems you're trying to solve. What's impacting my business? What is the root cause? How can I do it better? How can I act, like you said earlier, Austin? But the things that I see that are sometimes missed is that if you forget the problems you're trying to solve, you're deploying observability and hope it's going to find everything. But without the context and meaning, the data that you collect is almost, there's no meaning. There's no kind of value to it, right? If you know that these transactions are my most critical checkout transactions online, you know that they are the crown jewels, right? They're the things that you must monitor and absolutely be watertight with. Whereas other things that might boil away and present themselves as anomalies or issues, then you just have to prioritize, and context gives you that.
Yeah, no, totally agree, right? So you walk into an organization and they've got a number of monitoring tools, and they say, hey, we think we need to move to observability. Where do you start with that?
For me, it's about the right strategy, knowing kind of where to take. Observability is it's more than one thing. It should be company wide. You should have multiple stakeholders. Everyone's going to want their piece if you get it right. It's about lenses into the available data. If you've got too many tools, then you've already got too many lenses, too many opinions. There's always every vendor's going to say we can consolidate, but there's nothing wrong with having multiple tools that might be the best at what they do. But again, going back to what we said earlier, is that they both have to kind of come together and kind of measure the same thing and have similar outcomes via kind of context. But I think it's strategy is the most important thing. What is observability? What does it do for me? What problems do we solve? And what does done look like? When we deployed observability, what should I have? What will I have? What am I promising to the business? And the problems that we solve are things like we spend too much time firefighting. We can never find root cause. Incidents are taking too long to resolve, right? That's business impacting. And they're the things that we should kind of prioritize in the strategy. What problems are we trying to solve?
Yeah, but I totally agree. And I think there's two pieces to it, right? Because quite often in IT, we're very operationally cost focused, right? So you have that lens of, well, could we have less people in level 1, level 2 support? Could we have less tools, etc.? And the output of that is great. We'll spend less time firefighting. Our MTTR will improve, etc. But I think the bit that often organizations struggle with is, how do we take that and then apply that to what does it mean for a business? Took a car manufacturer, for example. Well, how many more cars are we going to get out the door, or are we going to make those cars more profitable? Right. And this is not a unique problem to observability, right? It's one we've had conversations about for years and years. It's kind of bridging that gap between IT and the business, and really being able to get to an end result that actually does impact the bottom line. I mean, what do you see in this, Greg? And have you got any tips for people who are struggling to make that leap, I guess?
I think I know we're talking about observability. Immediately, the first thought is we're gonna solve technical problems, right? We're gonna get to root cause. But once you're capturing your data, going back to lenses and your strategy being company wide, everyone's a stakeholder, not just the techies that are in a cloud team or a digital team that are kind of, or SREs that are deploying. You need to understand the data to think, how can it work for me as well at the same time? So, for example, if you are in that car manufacturer, you want to look at where you want to be able to measure something from end to end and where the delays are. How could my data help better decision making, right? So the decision making is sometimes solving problems, but it also is about how can I make this how can I make efficiency gains for my business? So an example of this is many years ago, a lot of people that know me, I worked for, or my customer was a large shipping container customer, still the largest. We have a command center that are focused on hundreds of applications, but the main thing was really digital experience. Can I book? Can I track? Can I get a quote? They're the main things, right? But what we discovered after we had nice calm periods, everything was good. We were kind of being really, we weren't getting any major incidents. We were doing a brilliant job operationally. We started to look at the data and think, let's engage with the business to see what they need to see, because we're collecting a lot of stuff from movie user monitoring, page views. We could extract data from those pages. We could look at traces and logs to look at more specific data. But then what we started to do is actually on the quoting side, which is new business, we could look at, and this could be applied to any industry, is that we would look at the quotes that are coming in, but we could also work out what was in the quote, whether I'm shipping bananas from Africa to the United States, and they would get a quote, and they would look at multiple routes. They would look at the cheapest way there, but then we could actually track that customer, that quote in the future, and set up some alerts to say, have they come back to revisit the quote, etc. And so we'd kind of, with using our observability data, we would actually feed back to the business that, hey, one of these quotes is worth a couple of million. Why don't you go and give the customer a call, see what the issue actually is? And it kind of triggered like a bit of a wave of, and this is kind of almost 10 years ago, when digital experience is really kind of making a difference at this particular customer. They were still using faxes, phones. They were moving to online, and now nearly 100% is online. But it's not just the slow. It's not just the HTTP 500s. It's not the exceptions that might happen in code. That's what observability you think is there. But there are so many other benefits that would help the customer that owns the data, that owns the tool. So you can make a difference and suggest things.
The phrase you use there, I think, is the most common phrase I'm using now when I'm speaking to customers, is the lenses. The data's always been the data. Yeah, there's maybe some more granular stuff and cool stuff, but it's like the perspective you're looking at it. That's like the upside business value now, is having a different view of it. I was talking to somebody the other day, and if we solve the problem from a monitoring point of view, we'll call it that rather than observability, it would make a difference where in some cases they'll be stuck on the shelves. It's just basic. It's not basic, but like that story of like connecting to business, it's the same data. Nothing's really changed. It's just looking at it from a different perspective.
But it means different things to different people, right? If you come with it with a technical lens, you're talking about packets, IP addresses, tags, labels, ALBs. It's a different language. If you come with it from the business angle and their lens, they're like, well, how many? How fast? What does this mean to me? Do I meet my number? And from a capacity view, is like, are we being efficient? Are we spending too much money? There's so many different lenses, and I mean, we've been to a few. I probably use lens a lot, Matt. We talk quite a bit. It's either lens or persona or something else. But like going back to the strategy thing, is that observability strategies should not be for one team, not with one lens, not technical only. It should be company wide. because everyone's a stakeholder. Everyone's gonna, if you get the data right and you get what you measure right, and you start with the real, and you deliver on the problems that you started off that you were going to solve, then everyone's going to want the data.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of my next question was going to be, how do you fund a business case for this, right? Which comes very well out of that discussion, right? Because there are two routes to fund this. I think there's a traditional way of operational savings, tool consolidation, etc., or there's the business improvement side. But what are you seeing right now, Greg?
Oh, I mean, it's a mixed bag. It's all of that, really. Consolidation's one thing because there's a lot of tools out there, but I'm not against customers having more tools. It's some tools are brilliant at what they do, but they don't. That's all they do, and I wouldn't ever say just replace it. But I would, and what I see is there's a lot of collecting just for the sake of it. There's a lot of infrastructure that's being deployed and kind of needlessly or not getting the right coverage or monitoring the right things. I would always, if I was to come into a customer, regardless whether they've got 100 tools, no tools, they've got problems, I would always start with what problems you're trying to solve. What is it you're trying to measure? Because you can start small and get it right, and then you slowly expand. Yeah, I mean, and go back to the business case. It's again, the business case is kind of the obvious things, like we could save money, we could do it cheaper. Are we doing it right? Why don't we start with actually assessing how we're using our tools? Because sometimes the people that come to me are not always technical. They're kind of service owners or directors, and they don't really, they just think they have the tools in place that are doing the best job that they can. But sometimes we go in and uncover that actually you're not using half the features, or there could be a better way of doing this. So it's not always about the tools. Sometimes it's sometimes approach and what the tools are there to actually do.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And it's an interesting challenge because IT is traditionally very bad at showing ROI. Build these business cases and then don't show how that impacts the business. And actually, one of the really interesting use cases I'm seeing for observability right now is taking that data and starting to prove out the ROI and the cost of AI projects, for example. Right, so really simple place to go and grab data from, feed that into an observability tool and go, here you go, guys. Here's where you could really, this project's working, that one's not working. It's how much money you're making. Here's your biggest running queries and all that sort of stuff. So observability is a fairly simple way to gather that data in and start proving that ROI back. But we need to be better at doing that in observability itself. So maybe we'll come back to that in a bit.
Well, yeah, I was going to say part of what.
So there's a few comments. I know we've got a question as well, which are just messages about, but let's maybe just run some of the comments. So I'll just post them on the screen as we go through. So this was from Tim Dodo. Hi, how you doing, Tim? I think we spoke for many years. There were many monitoring platforms before O11Y. IUI moved it to the ephemeral world, and then there's another one from Roland. Hey, Roland, we've probably not spoken for a year, I think. Hope you're doing well. To me, it's about observability can help a company make money, save money, and reduce risk. And then there's one more comment before a question from Mike Morgan-Lee. How you doing, Mike? I think you owe me breakfast now, I think. We'll come back to that another time. All comes back to the why for me. Why do you need to observe X, Y, and Z? And how does it ultimately support the delivery and operations for the business? Being far more focused and aligned to what the business actually needs leads to a more efficient and effective operations. And then I'll just put the question up if you want to cover the question, Austin. And then that's not the question. This is the question from Robert. Cheers, Robert.
So, do you think the COVID pandemic catalyzed a lot of change? And if so, how and why? And I assume we're talking specifically in observability here.
That's a question for me, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it definitely changed working kind of approaches where people actually work from, without a doubt. I think if we go back at looking at corporate offices, lots of offices are empty. Networks were kind of nothing running across them. From the big pillars of like any enterprise organization, your network, your data center, and your applications, I think a lot changed from COVID. I think flexibility for the worker. I mean, I'm a kind of work for myself. So, and I started my company off the back of the COVID pandemic, actually. I didn't want to necessarily, because I couldn't go to my office, see my customer. It was like, well, actually, I'm going to do something myself. If I'm at home, I want to do something for me. So it did for me in that point of view, but did it catalyze a lot of change? I think if you look back since the early lockdowns, I think it probably has, there's a lot smaller footprint in offices, although they're growing back, where from the security angles of data and things like that, people working from home brings different risks, whether they're in the buildings, they're more protected from network infrastructure, etc. From observability, I'm not sure if it made that much change, because I'm not sure COVID kind of drove different changes for me from an observability perspective.
I definitely observed a spike in productivity tooling, ITSM tooling. There's definitely a lot more bigger buying activities taking place through pandemic. There's clear activity that's gone down now, but from an ITSM tooling point of view, there was definitely an increase in customers wanting more.
To monitor, so the things you had to monitor changed, and I was working for a large service provider at the start of COVID, and they have hundreds of customers across the globe, and basically where they're at. So because of COVID, everyone is at home. There was the network and measurement of networks, utilization of networks, the connectivity, the experiences completely changed. It took some companies weeks, months to kind of fix it. They were just throwing bandwidth. They were trying to panicking quite a bit, not knowing whether they were going to come back from being at home and being locked down, etc. But yeah, you're right. I mean, think about it, there's probably a huge list of changes that or places and things that would have been impacted from it, for sure.
Yeah, I think there's two areas I've seen probably a little bit more interesting since. One is kind of the whole kind of end user device type monitoring, your Nexthinks of the world. Other vendors are available, but then also this kind of real user monitoring experience piece, right? Which beforehand was a bit of a nice to have, but now is kind of really, really super important. I think because now you have CEOs of companies doing their quarterly update from their office at home, right? Rather than being surrounded by an IT team with a shed load of flashy new Cisco gear and WebEx screens and all that sort of stuff.
Those digital experience companies, Nexthinks, Lakeside. I worked for Eternity, so I know the space pretty well. And again, when we say, but for me, observability, and it kind of annoys me so much, is Nexthink really observability? What 1,000 eyes is that observability? I want to kind of measure. For me, observability is measuring the state of something, of a business process, the health of something. Nexthink having software installed, or I mean, I love Nexthink, by the way. I think the product's really good. But I guess those types of tools in digital experience management or digital experiences, they saw a bit of a bump, a bit of growth in Teams usage, being able to monitor it, Zoom calls, looking at how many, looking at crashes, line quality. That was all good. But yeah, for me, observability remains with those vendors that are in that quadrant that actually look at the real deep dive stuff that really measure the performance of a business, basically. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I should have been more. I wasn't expecting that question, and I should have answered, because I did work for Eternity and I know the tool really, really well. they had a change, an uptick for sure, because lots of companies had no visibility on the network with packets and flows in a corporate environment before lockdown. We could see everything, and that's what I used to do at the shipping container company that I mentioned earlier. We used to look at the whole network. We could see every call. We could see every laptop, desktop connected. But I guess with COVID, everyone stepped outside the boundary. There's no flows, there's no packets anymore. We're reliant on pulses that might go across the network or agents that are on those devices to really tell us what's happening. And those types of vendors like Eternity Nextlink, they probably saw a bit of an uptick. I'd left by then, so I wasn't really tracking their booking volumes.
Makes sense. Okay, so you've we've talked about what observability is, what people should be looking to achieve, how to build a business case. What would be the top 3 things that organizations should not do when they're considering observability?
There's sometimes a bit of a trap. When you think observability, they think how many servers, how many containers, they need to deploy everything everywhere. And that's sometimes a bit of a mistake for me. I would start with the MVP, the minimal viable product. What do I actually need? What telemetry and from where do I actually need to measure what my business is actually doing? Sometimes it's, if I go back to before these big tools appeared, I would use a SQL script and a table to tell me how many orders were coming in every minute, and I could see what's happening. And then I would use other metrics to say how my systems were performing. And this is before digital, but I think you have to prioritize that first. And the mistake sometimes is that observability then becomes too expensive, or we can't afford it, and it's almost put to the side. Oh, not this year. Perhaps we just do one application, we do another. But if you start to prioritize the data that you collect, you'll quickly work out that you're collecting billions of traces, billions of log lines. Well, actually, and it's a bit like a security, a SIEM, a Splunk or something like that, is that it's expensive to kind of collect everything when sometimes you're only looking for the little indicators. And the same way as security look for the threats, the attempts to kind of break in, we're looking for the things that tell us the good. That's a good, that's an order, that's success. And you've got to really prioritize that. You don't have to have it everywhere. And that's a mistake that I sometimes see. And I guess my partners, people like Dynatrace, Logic Monitor, Elastic, Catchpoint, etc., they all have their different approaches, and they all have the capabilities of measuring the things we discussed. Is what is it you're trying to measure? Start with that. And the mistake sometimes is that you don't have to include the whole data center. You don't have to include all of your environments. If you want to go into those use cases where you want to speed up a developer and their release cycles and debug things faster, then that's going to take a little bit of effort and some put some kind of budget aside for the developers' environments. But sometimes what I see is that we collect a lot of stuff for the sake of it, and we should know what you're coming in, what telemetry from where before you start.
Okay, that's your number one, which I totally agree with. What else do you see people doing that they shouldn't be doing on a regular basis?
Not sharing observability in the organization. It should be company-wide. Everyone's a stakeholder. And sometimes I see different teams with different pockets of tools, and they think it's their tool. They do the troubleshooting. We create the dashboards. That's something that it means that the adoption isn't going to go anywhere. You want people using it and giving you the ideas, because if you're in a customer with mature observability or kind of operational maturity, what you'll find is that they are getting a lot of the ideas come from the other stakeholders. Oh, could you do this? Could you build this dashboard? And you ask why? It's like, I never thought of that use. That's really cool, right? And again, it doesn't cost anything. You're probably already collecting the data. You're just not seeing that angle, that lens into the data. And the mistake there, if you don't promote it and allow people access, it's not going to innovate. You're just going to be stuck doing the same thing. Now you're going to ask for a third, aren't you?
You don't have to. You don't have to, but yeah, those are definitely a couple of really good ones. And I like that because when you look at so why I keep talking about automotive manufacturers today, but they're a really good example, as we saw with like the Phoenix project, for example, of how as soon as you get that observability data out to people in a factory, they think of things a totally different way, and they go, "Oh, that's great! I could do this, and this with it. Oh, brilliant! We could solve this problem with it." And all of a sudden you're like, "Wow, we're really making a difference here to."
Automotive's neat because you can associate yourself to it. So if you look on my CV, I've worked at Honda and I've worked at BMW, two big giants, and although I was there in like web application support teams and it was in them days, this is like a long time ago. This is before the digital boom and application performance management. I was deploying Wiley, right? One of the very first tools in this space. And it was brilliant, by the way, and it still is. We started with a technical lens, and that's where I started to grow myself to think, hang on a minute. That person's asking me a question, and I'd be inquisitive. I'd be like, why does that solve your? Why do you want that data? And I try to think, actually, okay, because we were dealing with plants, we're dealing with retailers, we're dealing with online ordering. Although there wasn't that much online ordering when I was there, it was more going into the showroom and being on like one of their PCs but they're all part of the sales cycle, and there's loads of like milestones and different systems and applications and data flying all over the place. That's when I guess in the BMW days, that's when it started to open up my eyes that actually all this data helps someone else because it wasn't just a technical lens, how fast, how many users, this is great, because that was the thing that really we were looking for. But we've got 500 users, or we've got 1,000 dealers online. It's all we're busy, or we'd be looking for the marketing campaigns on a bank holiday or something. But there's actually so many more uses of the data. Like we would get competitive intelligence data, we'd be able to measure and pull the data from what we could see in our logs and stuff, and start to think about what other uses could the business have. Car manufacturers are probably a good industry.
I'm just going to pop up a question from Robert. I think it's an interesting one. I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but have recent developments with AI's LLMs changed the way observability happens at all? And what are the risks of integrating AI into data analysis?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's I guess look at the last year, agentic AI, it's everywhere. It's in every post and things like that. I think you just got to be really careful with it. I think it will help. You've got to be careful with what data, who's seeing it, where it's processed, is it being shared? There's so many things you've got to think about, even from Copilot in your office teams. You can ask it questions and it's doing things, and you do have to think where you searching across the whole corporate SharePoint there, or where are you getting this data from? I think for in the terms of observability, it's going to help to automate massively. It can do all of that one step ahead of you type of thing, where it's questioning, determining root cause, running a workflow, testing, validating whether there's a change taking place. It can do all those types of things that you would do as a human to try and in your day-to-day job. It can make you more efficient, which might mean that you have to reshuffle people. But I think you just got to just use it sensibly and understand it, where it's hosted, what it's looking at, who else can see it.
Yeah,
I guess we're not going to talk about sensitive data, because if you're in banking and PII and stuff, I just want to make sure that if it's a technical solution, it's something AI for technical, it looks at technical data only, really. So that's the other sensitive data boundary you need to think about.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. Firstly, there's a sorry, excuse me. There. I think, again, bringing that data out, observability tools these days have the ability to say, okay, not only what's the ROI, what's the performance of your AI models, but also understanding things like guardrails and executions and grounding and relevance and all of that, you can really easily pull that data out and use it to manage and make decisions about your AI systems, and therefore get them from testing into production a lot quicker, and give you confidence around that. I think there's the other side of this question is where we're seeing these being used in observability tools themselves, right? And I think there's a couple of challenges here from my perspective. Really interested in your perspective, Greg, because we've seen a lot of what I would call sticking plaster tools over the years, where you've got all of this data from all of these monitoring tools, and instead of fixing the data, you put a sticking plaster on top that might have an AI label that then goes, oh, it's fine, don't worry, just give me all that stuff that is rubbish and I'll make sense of it, and then I'll tell you the answer out of it, and you'll get less incidents and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I know. What are you saying, Greg?
So I follow your kind of posts on LinkedIn, and I kind of follow it quite daily. I'm looking at things, and a lot of the vendors now are measuring AI and use of AI and who's querying what. It's interesting to see using observability, and again, observability can surface the data and make it actionable. So for AI, first of all, you could measure the use of AI and what people are actually doing. What is it actually doing? Could it and who is asking what questions? It could be in any scenario. So it's a good measuring AI is one thing, but the other thing is that you mentioned is I'm just hesitant at the moment, right? I know of tools out there that they're doing exactly what you just mentioned. They are sat between all the vendors. They are looking at because there's big pillars of vendors, right? You've got your network and packets and flows on one side. You've got your observability in the middle, which is kind of Datadogs, Dynatraces, and New Relics, and Instanas, and whoever else is in that space. And then you've got the other kind of side, which is a whole new world, which could be infrastructure, could be security, could be anywhere, right? But it's about access. It's about, that's the first concern, which I mentioned earlier. What are they accessing? How are you accessing? Are you doing it safely? Are you just looking at the technical stuff that we would do operationally? But there are tools out there already that I'm seeing that are doing exactly that. They're decision making for you automatically. They're gathering the evidence. Is there a change? Do you have no problem? Is there a knowledge base article that has this exact error message that we've been looking for? Is it known? Is it new? Has it come from a release? There are tools that are actually doing that already. And some of the big vendors have these features as well, right? In certain use cases. I think it's a good thing, right? I mean, I've come from printing out paper in boxes of paper, and I'm not sure if you've ever seen these boxes. We'd have pallets, and we'd print a pallet every week of paper just for debugging code in the places that I've worked. And now we've gone from tools that do it automatically, and they debug code or anything like that. I think it's great because that's just where the industry is going. I just think we just need to be, the customers have to be mindful and careful about how they plumb that in, what data they've got access to, where that data is being processed, etc., etc. You just got to be careful with it, I think. I'm not against it, but I haven't really deployed it yet, all these co-pilots. For me, this is my job, that's what I do, but I think it's at some point we're just going to have to let it in. It's just going to be there in every product. It's just going to hopefully make our lives easier. But
I just jump in because I knew where Austin was going with that question. I'll ask it in plain language. Observability versus AIOps, I think, is the question. What's your perspective? I know you had an opinion, Austin, on Matt. I think it was 2 years ago when we talked about that on the podcast. I think it was literally 2 years ago. But yeah, thoughts on introduction of AIOps versus observability.
All right. So if you go back a decade, and when observability was kind of the word, and AIOps was certainly being used, observability is about the collection of the data. That's what's going to go and pull it and ingest it and make sense of it. AI ops is really about what now? It's like, okay, so could I self-heal something? Could I go and qualify something? Could I go and re-release the code? AI ops isn't really going to do anything without the data and precise data, because you could get AI ops to go and restart a service on a server, go and restart some pods, go and do something, but it has to, that data has to be watertight, has to be kind of absolutely completely trusted. And I think that's why observability for me is the collector of the data, the intelligence layer to say this is good, this is bad, the measurement, right? And the AI ops is more about operationally all these events and things that are coming into an AI platform. Is like, well, how can I get to root cause faster? If I have determined root cause and I've got a 99% likeliness that this is the root cause, then what playbooks, what can I do to try and self-heal in an automated fashion? They're two different worlds. I mean, and there are some brilliant vendors that do AI ops, and they kind of do all this, but they focus not so much on collection, because that can be expensive and it's time consuming. They could just be the receiver of all the data and make the decisions, and then send something off to Stackstorm or something to go and restart or run some kind of Ansible or something. But they are two different worlds. I think they're two different. One's collecting, one's acting, and you can only act if you absolutely trust what you're collecting. And sometimes if you're collecting a load of rubbish and it doesn't make any sense and there's no context, then very difficult to get it right.
Yeah, perfect. Right, thank you so much, Greg. I'm just going to summarize a little bit of what we've said today. So if there's any last minute questions, please put them in the chat now. So we talked about what is observability today, monitoring the state of something. Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Focusing on business outcomes and not just, looking at tin for the
sake of it.
Sake of it. Yeah. Being able to understand the blast radius of something, and more importantly, the context of things. The more tools you have, the more opinions you have. So getting your strategy right is important. Too many organizations spend their time firefighting, and it's very expensive. And how can you use observability to make the data work for your business? And you talked through a great example of a shipping container company you worked for, where you ended up taking all of this kind of data, where you were looking at kind of real user monitoring and page views and things like this, and being able to say, okay, well, what was in the quote and what was the most expensive quote, and how did somebody revisit it, and should we call them because they were worth a lot of money, right? That stuff you were doing 10 years ago and people still aren't doing today is like really expensive. So when you start, you need to really understand what you are trying to measure from a business outcome perspective. And then we talked about things not to do, and you said, don't just put everything everywhere, right? Look at what telemetry you need to run your business, not just splurging it all over the data center. And do share what you're doing with the organization, and you'll get your product used and you'll get many more ideas back rather than just keeping it as a local tool. Then we talked about AI, and how AI observability is really key right now. And there's some cool things around and coming that are looking at answers that are existing already in the knowledge base and stuff like that. And then Matt asked, what's the difference between observability versus AI ops? And you said observability is the collection of data, and AI ops is taking action on that data, essentially.
If you ever are in the looking for a new job and you want to be a note taker professionally, that's probably the best set of notes. And you're doing that, and you're on here as well. That is just mind-blowing.
I'm pretty sure AI can do this automatically for
I
people.
can't even remember some things I've said half an hour ago. I'm like, because I'm going from one conversation over what you've done there is like, did I say that? Yeah. But,
Yeah.
And that was one of the shorter roundups as well. That was
professional note taker.
It was.
That was amazing.
Greg, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of that. Where can people get hold of you and find out more about what you do?
Find me on LinkedIn. You can come and find me on my website, visibilityplatforms.com or observability.co.uk. We're on the Dynatrace partner website, various other kind of partners. Just do a search for visibility platforms and you'll be able to find us. Drop us an email if you need to. LinkedIn's probably the best place that I guess most people will be listening from. Just add me as a friend or a connection, and I can chat through IMs or anything, whatever you call it. I'm not really a messenger, right? I don't really do socials and stuff, but yeah, I'll get back to you that way.
Super. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me on. I was a little bit, I don't know what I was expecting, but the hour's nearly up. I made it. It's
I think between us, we probably could have spent hours and hours talking about this stuff, right? So
so sometimes Matt calls me for a 5-minute, and we're on it for like 30 minutes because there's so much to share. And when we see each other sometimes in person, it's like there's. Oh, I know what I was going to mention to you. It's almost like I've got a whole lot of notes just for Matt just to mention.
I'm slowly converting Greg to voice notes, a little bit, or at least consuming them.
Oh, dear.
My kids have been sending me them for ages, and I'm like, oh God, I can't listen. Right? I don't have a headset on me, and I'm like, I have to kind of put it up against me, and I kind of sometimes forget. I like the old text. I'm still a one finger typer. I guess there is a way forward to. For the voice notes. I'm a bit older than you two. I've probably got 20 years on both of you, so one finger typing is the way forward for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Matt, what have we got coming up next for our wonderful audience?
So our next session, we've got it in the calendar, but the invite isn't out yet for the podcast. It's a Maxim supporter, and we are talking all things enterprise service management. That is date will be handy, wouldn't it? 9th of January, that'll be. It's showing as 1 till 2, so I need to change that. But yeah, 9th of January is the next session.
Wonderful. Look forward to that. So for anybody who's listening live or listening over the next couple of weeks, have a wonderful Christmas break. Assuming you get a break, hopefully you're not in retail and you're on call and you have a good level of observability to handle the Boxing Day chaos. And we look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thanks again, Greg. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.